Hi, everyone. Natasha Trenev here, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. We're talking about chronic disease, which unfortunately happens to be 80% of our $4.3 trillion healthcare budget in the United States. And I'm sure it's just as bad as in Canada or other locations in the world. So, we're going to give a very simplistic explanation about chronic disease and how your GI tract is really the place where it all starts. And we just want to remind you that we're not giving medical advice. We're not telling you not to do what your medical professional is telling you to do. We're not telling you not to take your drugs or follow any other directions. We're simply here talking about lifestyle and how to improve your digestion, your health, and the intestinal microbiota, which we believe is where all of this disease starts.
Mhm.
So, before I start a conversation with Ginny, I want to let people know, first of all, you have 27 feet of GI tract. In that GI tract, you have 100 trillion microbes. And every day there's a dynamic shift in who's in charge and who's not in charge. And usually, if a bad organism or a yeast starts overgrowing in any area of your intestinal tract, they will start producing negative compounds that not only hurt your intestinal lining, but will cause the immune system to be misdirected to attack its own cellular structure rather than catching the pathogens that are causing the problem in the first place. And the second reason for these chronic diseases is when any organism is allowed to overgrow, it will start producing toxins that to eliminate other competition so that it can dominate on the intestinal wall. And that's basically all chronic disease is, and autoimmune disease especially. So if you have these problems, what my recommendation is, and I'm sure Ginny's is, that you have to change your diet. You have to have the right precision probiotic supplementation. You have to have the right amount of exercise. And we're also recommending meditation. It take you away from all the stress, because all the stress and your perception of reality is what turns on and off the genes. They don't turn on and off by themselves. It's what causes your body to become in a disease state, because you're creating chemicals from stress, from anxiety, from whatever you're feeling that are definitely detrimental to the rest of your body, and they're detrimental to the beneficial microorganisms that line your GI tract. That's why it is essential that you have the right precision probiotic, because of the amount of stress, fear, anxiety, inability to cope with all the world things that are going on is causing people not to feel well, and eventually might end up in a very unpleasant disease, which we know what the disease state is. So as soon as we finish answering some of Ginny's questions and talking some more, we will give you a protocol which we think you should start on, and a diet to follow that we think will help you overall to allow the body to have ample tools to heal itself.
And I want to emphasize, the piece that you said about stress, Natasha. Let's also include traumatic events, either
Mhm.
from, in utero, early childhood, last week. If
Mhm.
those traumas are not somehow healed and resolved, and I always tell my readers, use a mind body integrated therapy. Don't go for talk psychotherapy. It has so little efficacy. Use something that
Mhm.
actually integrates with the physical tissues and cells of the body. So we're talking about craniosacral at level 2 or higher, acupressure tapping,
Mhm.
hypnotherapy, or any kind of somatic experiencing, because when you can deal with trauma and stressors, then your physical body is set to actually receive all of the supplementation that you're ingesting, and
Right.
actually let it do what it's supposed to do, because your body and your mind and your soul are now working in the same direction.
Precisely. And look, let me just tell you another easy thing you can do is what we that's been popularized now on the internet, especially YouTube, by Dr. Joe Dispenza, by Dr.
Mhm.
Bruce Lipton, by our favorite Greg Braden, and they talk about the mind-heart coherence. You know
Mhm.
that your heart has more neurons than any other organ in the body, so it is really another second brain or third brain. and its magnetic field is 500 times greater than your magnetic field around your body. So when you get the heart and the mind in coherence, your consciousness, your body can quiet down, heal itself. And it's very
Mhm.
important to learn that technique. Just a couple of minutes a day, just tell them, I love you, body. Thank you for serving me. Everything is fine. I'm feeling good. Start, giving gratitude statements and affirmations to calm yourself down, because then you become a better host for these foods and supplements that we recommend.
Mhm. Yeah, because I don't think I've ever come across anyone with a chronic illness whose gut is not unhealthy. Like, how can you have a healthy gut microbiota and have a chronic disease? They just don't go together.
Precisely. Because you think we talked about it, that the pH of the GI tract changes when you have a chronic disease. And that implies that the beneficial bacteria, which produce lactic acid and other forms of acids, it bring down the pH of the intestines just to slightly acidic. And that slightly acidic state creates a hostile environment for other bad players to take hold of the intestinal wall. So anytime that pH goes up, it means you don't have enough beneficial bacteria. And that's another indication that some microorganism that's or more microorganisms are there creating this hostile environment that is the cause of your chronic disease or your autoimmune disease, but you're just not aware of it.
And I'd like to reiterate what you just said, because a lot of people who get their health information from TikTok, the word alkaline is, you want to have an alkaline body pH, and alkalinity is the huge thing. And reiterating what Natasha just said, a healthy GI tract is slightly acidic. Certain
Mhm.
drugs used in chronic disease, like prednisone, for example, will take that pH and make it alkaline. And now the bad bacteria can thrive and the good bacteria cannot thrive. And so, if you're simultaneously taking a drug that's changing the pH of your GI tract, and then wondering why your probiotic therapy is not really having an effect, or doing what you thought it would do, you have to understand that it's not just it's not just the bacteria, it's the environment that you're providing for the bacteria to live in. Which bacteria are going to thrive?
Correct, Judy. And I just want to reiterate, you and I have been in the field a long time. I've been in this field 56 years. And I'm sorry to say that a lot of the even alternative healthcare practitioners are not giving good protocols or good regimens to help their patients. It's all based on this, concept that they're going to give you a dietary supplement for each symptom. That's not how it works. And there's so many problems even with the probiotics on the market. 90% of them don't even contain what they claim on the label. We know that when you test all of them, 80% of them don't have the ingredients that they claim on the label. So it's a very trying way of figuring out what works. All I can tell people, if you're doing something and it doesn't work, I was just telling another practitioner today, stop. Give me a challenge 12 practitioners. Stop everything you're giving. Give me 2 weeks on my precision probiotic protocol. And let's see how those patients feel in 12 weeks before we decide to add anything else. Tell them to go on a low carb diet, tell them to eliminate raw foods, tell them to, make sure they chew their foods, do also what I call testing. We used to do the elimination diet in the old days. And if
Mhm.
something is bothering you, eliminate it from your diet for 72 hours and then try it in small quantities. You don't have to spend a fortune going for all these tests. Just start, as you say, listening to your gut or listen to your body. This is what's so important for us to learn, that we think some supplements are too expensive because we're throwing away money on cheap solutions that are not helping us at all.
I'll give you an example. So, my 17-year-old son, who takes Healthy Trinity every day, but he's got an acne problem. And I said to him, I said, here's what, and he's, like I said, getting his health advice from TikTok and saying, Mom, you already know all this stuff, just kills me. But anyway, um, simultaneously, he is consuming pasteurized dairy products at least 3 times a day.
Mhm.
And I don't know when is the last time he's gotten 8 hours sleep at night. And I
Yeah.
said to him, you like cut out your dairy, your pasteurized dairy for 2 weeks and get
Mhm.
8 hours sleep at night for 2 weeks. Keep taking your probiotics and then let's see where your skin is.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Well, this is when he's happy to have you, but most people don't have either you or I telling them what to do. And
Mhm.
this is the problem. We have too much what I call cheap information going out, or information that requires a 30-second attention span. And I tell people, so how's that working for you? How are you feeling? Maybe all those gurus that are influencers that look sexy and they're giving advice, but when we have 80% of the public chronically ill, that
Mhm.
means it's worse than it's ever been. Even in the 50s, we didn't have that many chronically ill people. In fact, a fraction of the chronically ill people we have now, even though they smoked and ate red meat. So something is very wrong here. And that's what I'm saying. So, what the problem has been for the last, I would say, 40 years, and it's been getting progressively worse, is that there's a poor diagnosis. There's, taking care of symptoms. People don't understand their GI tract. I was just talking to someone today and they said, oh, look at the billions of dollars of sales in probiotics. I said, too bad that none of those probiotics are fixing the chronic disease. And he says,
Yeah.
oh, wow. I said, yeah. I said, we're spending billions on products that don't work. And I said, why am I still around? Because I know that at least 80% of my customers stay with me because the products work. And it's not a sales pitch. I'm just telling people that, look, we have to have better discernment on the protocols we follow, who we listen to, because there's too many people giving different stories or uh, narrowing down things in a very technical way and telling you this is bad because it has this in it. This one has an oxalate. This one has something else that's bad for you. My goodness, it's enough to make anybody dizzy if you're not in the field. So, what I've told people, look, you know, stop eating stuff that annoys you. Stop eating out. Cook your own food. Saute your own vegetables. Use just salt and fresh extra virgin olive oil. Make sure you get the right food into your diet. Second of all, sit down, get away from your machines, and focus on somebody, or listen to beautiful music, or watch beautiful scenery, if nothing else. That helps your body, believe it or not, produce juices that's going to digest that food and really nourish your body, not just feed your body.
Mhm.
That's the problem. And that's why people are aging quicker. That's why they look a wreck by the time they're 50, because their engine is just worn out. And I also tell them, take the Healthy Trinity now because of the stress of the environment and what's going on. I tell them, take it twice a day. And if you want to really get maximum effect, take the powders, each of the dairy-free powders in the Healthy Start system, a half a teaspoon of each in 6 ounces or more of filtered, unchilled water, and take it before a meal. And do this for a couple of weeks. Just give yourself a couple of weeks and see how much better you feel, because once those bacteria integrate with your body's function and they start working better, you're going to start feeling much better.
But along with that, I want to bring up something else that you and I have talked about a number of times in the past, especially when clients have had issues, is that if you have a chronic or acute illness, uh, because the nature in probiotics are actually what I call therapeutic level, like they're not just,
Mhm.
they're actually very potent. People in those advanced disease states often cannot take a full dose. They can't take it every day. For my
Mhm.
readers with gut diseases, sometimes I literally have people who have to start not even with an eighth of a teaspoon, with one pinch of one species. And then
Mhm.
they gradually build that up, and then they can move up to an eighth of a teaspoon of that one species. And so their probiotic supplementation has to go very slowly. I know one time, Natasha, you and I were talking, I can't remember what condition the woman had, but she realized she can only take one Healthy Trinity every 4 days.
Mhm.
Otherwise, her die off was so strong, she'd be in bed.
Yeah,
So,
you're right. For some of those who are so sensitive and chronically ill, actually, our Healthy Start system is the only probiotic that you can take in such a measured base and build up a tolerance. And, I'm just giving general directions for people who are under generally a lot of stress and need to be helping their digestive tract and start feeling better. People are also dealing with a huge amount of depression. So
Yeah.
the beauty of this is that neither Ginny or I are wrong. It just depends on your individual need. And Ginny, for the last 30 years, as far as I remember, has been coaching people how to take her products and how to take our probiotics so that they can build up tolerance. Some people are so ill, they cannot tolerate nourishment. And that's
Yeah.
what leads to what we call a dying body. The body
Yeah.
can no longer effectively nourish itself and it ends up dying. And that's a
Yeah,
huge
and
problem.
that's when people have to go on something called an elemental diet.
Hmm.
So they take the product, one of the products I formulated called Absorb Plus, and they go on that exclusively.
Hmm.
So that takes out every possible allergen or anything they might be having a response to, but it's like
Hmm.
going back to breast milk. So for the first time, like you drink an Absorb Plus shake, the nutrients are in your bloodstream within 20 minutes. Once the body can then nourish itself, then we also have, like right at the start of the diet, people using the Natron probiotics in the powdered form so that they can start with that small dosing, or some of them can start with, a quarter teaspoon of all three right away. Again, it just
Hmm.
depends on how many pathogens they have in their gut, how much die-off they're going to experience, because you don't want to have too much die-off or they're going to be triggered into a flare. So again, it's this thing of listening to your gut, listening to your body, proceeding at the pace, but your goal is to build up to the full dosage, because until you do that, your digestive and absorptive capabilities cannot function properly. The healthy gut microbiota is the foundation of everything.
Absolutely. And it's proven every day. I said this more than 50 years ago. And by golly, people didn't even know what probiotics were when I introduced the term. Actually came from the animal husbandry industry.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if they're giving certain types of probiotics to the animals, which is specified for them, and their animals are staying healthy and not getting sick, why on earth wouldn't human beings be taking this to stay healthy? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what gave me the idea to bring the whole term probiotics to the American public and then transport it globally. But now people don't understand what probiotics are,
Yeah.
or anybody slapping on the label, because there are no standards. The standards are set and were read into congressional record. Nobody even knows they exist. And so it's not about any kind of marketing or sales. What it's about, that you need to understand that there are products that work and have been working for people for 20, 30, 40 years. And all these new products with the glitzy labels and stuff, nobody knows who in the heck is even making those products. Nobody's really formulating those products. It's whatever data they read. And it's like the 26 blind men feeling the elephant. And the situation is too severe, too serious. That's why we still have people who can answer questions in our office. So if you didn't remember anything Ginny and I said, you can still call my office. I don't know if she still has people at her listen to your gut place, but they need to be helped. And it's not that complicated. It's really very simple. It takes less than 20 minutes to understand what you need to take, but it'll transform your life, because the true probiotic is not only there to nourish your body, it's there to help your immune system. It's there to help you think. It's help you to rebuild your cells. I just recently found out that there are microbes in your neurons in your brain. Remember the controversy we had about the gut-brain barrier? So
Mm-hmm.
if those microorganisms are everywhere, don't you want to make sure that these are the microorganisms that evolved with us as Homo sapiens? And I know when people clutch their stomach and they said, I just feel terrible. I don't have any energy. I don't feel good. I'm constantly in pain when I eat something. I don't have the desire to go anywhere. I feel like I'm housebound. You've talked to those young people who have chronic diarrhea, and they literally have to peg the bathroom 5 miles from wherever they travel, because they
Mm-hmm.
can't leave home and get an urgency and not be able to find a bathroom. I've talked to people from my friend at Cedar Sinai, who's a colorectal surgeon in their 30s, who have a bag, a colostomy bag. They have no life, and they don't understand, how they got there. And it's because they didn't pay attention.
Yeah. And here's the quick gold standard that I give my people when they're saying, well, what about this probiotic? And because my probiotic section in my book is 40 pages long. But here's the quick way to tell if a probiotic is capable of having a therapeutic effect. Number one, does it guarantee the live bacterial count of every species through to the expiration date? Not at the time of manufacture. We don't care what they're putting in the bottle at the factory. We care that through to the expiration date, which species are guaranteed to be live and viable bacteria. And number two, that you don't want to have a bacteria that is a soil-based organism. You want to have food-based bacteria that humans have consumed for thousands of years. So the soil, and you and I could do a whole call just on soil-based organisms, but let's just leave it by saying that they are an experiment. There's a lot of issues with them. You get great results when you first start taking them because they are very competitive against yeast and fungus. And then you have some big problems on your hands. So again, guaranteed live species through to the expiration date and food cultured bacteria that humans have typically consumed, not soil-based organisms.
Thank you, Jenny. That's very important because the soil organisms do produce potent antibiotics. In fact, one thing I failed to tell people that those potent antibiotics are actual toxins. People don't know that the soil organisms were used to develop a lot of the prescription drugs we get as antibiotics. In fact, vancomycin was developed from a teaspoon of soil from the country of Borneo, where they found this organism, that produced such a potent antibiotic that eventually became vancomycin. I have the whole story. So you are fooling around with very smart entities that can produce a number of things in your body that harm you because their objective is to dominate. And when you said about the live microorganisms, be careful of people who claim 50, 60 billion because they don't tell you specifically how much of each organism they have. They just say it's a total of 60 billion. Which organism is in there at what number? And is it cited somewhere in literature that amount of potency will get you a certain effect? Second of all, bacteria are naturally antagonistic by nature. So you put them in a pill together, and that's why those products are not even because those bacteria are competing with each other, already producing compounds to knock each other out. So that by the time they get to your stomach acid, they don't have a real delivery system. So a lot of them, like 80%, are knocked out. So whatever survives doesn't give you the effect that you're looking for. Exactly. And that's why people say to me, well, I've tried a probiotic, it didn't get any effect. Or, gosh, I've tried that product that you can buy at Costco, or I see it advertised on TV, but never did anything for me. Because those companies are not interested in meeting your criteria of what you need. They're selling you a product. Whether or not that product works for you, they're not really interested. They're interested in their marketing plan and reaching what they feel is a uneducated consumer, and they don't feel it's their job to educate you. And I think with the problem with the chronic disease in North America, and I would say globally, because now autism is exploding in India and China. I heard Eastern Europe, which never heard of autism, has multiple cases erupting. Something is going down. And you say, well, I'm not planning to have any children. That's an indicator that there's something very bad happening. And it's a matter of time, not a matter of if, that you're going to get something, because the whole global environment has been changed and something is going on that's causing all these illnesses.
Yeah. And the other thing that never ceases to amaze me is the number of doctors who are recommending and selling the soil-based probiotics, which they shouldn't be allowed to have the term probiotic slapped on them, just saying. And I think to myself, have none of them done a tiniest bit of research on the spores that form from soil bacteria? Because if anyone has done even like, you can't, how do you kill the spores? If a
You
soil
can't.
organism goes into your gut and produces spores, Natasha, how do you kill those spores?
There's none. In fact, the spores of mold is considered a bioweapon by the Pentagon, because degrees as high as 1200 degrees Fahrenheit is needed to have an effect on them. So that's why they form spores, because they're made to survive in the environment. And we're only get a few of those that we don't wash off or we don't cook off. And if they get into our gut in large numbers, they will definitely lead to a disease. And I'm saying this, from my personal experience of 56 years. And I'm just shocked because in Eastern countries, these things are sold, but they're not highly regulated. And they may be cultural, and maybe certain cultures can tolerate larger numbers of these, but these people are selling these products in the billions. We have
Yes.
no idea what they're going to do.
But natto in Japan would be the prime example of that, right?
Yes.
But I lived in Japan, and let me tell you, the amount of natto that people would eat was minute, and they didn't eat it. I mean, I don't even know if they would eat it every month, let alone every day. And you would order like this thing of natto that just stank. It was disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And everyone at the table would have a tiny amount of it. You're not taking tens of billions of that soil organism and putting it into a supplement capsule. So
right.
they're not even dosing or utilizing the way they've been used by Indigenous people.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you I was criticized heavily because I was the first person that spoke out against soy milk. I said, I'm not saying it's good or bad for you. I just look how it's used in the culture. In the culture, it was used once a week, 6 or 8 ounces, and people didn't use it. It's the same thing we have with kombucha. I tell young people, please, you don't need to consume a yeast organism that's used to brew beer in a soft drink that, has another bacteria that produces cellulose, which we have no idea of long-term use of this bacteria. I said, I did briefly study the use of kombucha as a natural medicine in Asian countries. And it was passed down from family to family. They were taught certain ways to prepare it, certain ways to take care of it. And it was given as a medicine. It's just like soy milk. It's not to be consumed in large numbers every day. And you have to know who you're buying it from.
I tested kombucha when it first arrived in North America. So this is like 25 years ago. And the only place you could get it at that time was Germany. Came in a dark amber glass bottle. Mm-hmm. The dosage was 2 tablespoons. You wouldn't drink 8 ounces of kombucha. And I'll tell you the other reason that that it was a different substance is it wasn't sweet. It didn't have, like, kombucha nowadays is like a sugared soft drink.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's happened in the commercial sector with kombucha, but it is, again, it's not even the medicinal kombucha that was traditionally consumed in a small amount and infrequently.
And that's the kind of thinking that leads to chronic disease. Because if you give a sugar to a yeast organism, of course it's going to proliferate. I had this discussion with another practitioner today, and they said, well, they tell us to use beneficial yeast to fight candida. And I said, I've been in the field for 40 more years. I know very specifically that the people who were very active in the field have never allowed anybody that's on an anti-candida diet to have any small amount of yeast, let alone to drink, to take it as a supplement to combat candida. Mm-hmm. And I said, how are those people doing on those diets? Well, they're not doing very well. So I said, so why do people keep repeating stuff when they're not getting results? And we have young people with exploding chronic disease. I don't know if it's the so-called probiotic yeast that they're taking. I have no idea what's going on in these bodies, but we have adopted unproven concepts that were not accepted in the industry 30 years ago. I mean,
Exactly.
I helped William Crook with his 2 books. I gave him information on probiotics. And in his book, he's very strict. He just says absolutely no yeast containing foods, even a small slice of bread of any kind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now we're taking yeast, we're taking kombucha, we have candida, we're taking so-called beneficial yeast. Yeast has never been a probiotic that people consumed in large numbers.
No.
Never. It's always been used to brew something. And by the way, alcohol is a byproduct that yeast make. Why do yeast make alcohol? Think about it. It's their natural antimicrobial to clear the territory for themselves. And people don't think about this. And
Mm-hmm.
alcohol is a class A carcinogen, guys. It's a class A carcinogen along with nicotine. People don't understand that. You cannot be having an organism making alcohol in your body that can damage not only your cellular structure, but trigger a possible cancerous episode.
Well said.
I mean, it's just that I figured out, I said, I bet you most people don't know that alcohol is produced by yeast because people don't know yeast is used to ferment wine. I'm not saying you're going to get cancer from drinking wine. I'm just saying that taking the organism that is used to brew things by fermenting them and produces a small amount of alcohol or no alcohol, it doesn't matter. If it has the opportunity inside your GI tract to produce alcohol to get rid of competitors, it will do so. There's a very famous case in Japan where a man was cited for being intoxicated and he never touched an ounce of alcohol. They found he had a yeast overgrowth in his intestinal tract and it was producing alcohol in his intestinal tract. And when it entered his blood, the alcohol blood level rose to the level that he could have been arrested.
Unbelievable.
So it's a matter of just common sense. So let's talk about, just to summarize, chronic disease. Chronic disease is appearing because people don't understand the communication of these bacteria with your immune cells, what's going on in the GI tract. It's a complete forgetfulness of what we've been teaching 30 and 40 years ago, and a completely new theory of things and foods being brought out that is not making people healthy. Just think about it. So we have to change and reevaluate. We have to go back to basics. Who are the people who are telling you this is okay? They don't know anything. They haven't studied any cultures. I've studied multiple cultures to see why these people, before the name Blue Zone even existed, to find out why they lived long and what was in their diet. And everything in their diet and their lifestyle supported a healthy gut. All those people that produced massive disease had an unhealthy gut. It's as simple as that. So, Jini and I have here worked for tens of years telling people what to do. And please take this seriously. We really need to save our young people. We have an explosion of colon cancer among those young. I've never seen numbers like this. We have cancer that is growing at an exponential rate. I'm not giving you a quick fix for cancer. I'm just telling you the body only malfunctions when you don't support it. You have to support it both spiritually and mentally, the food that you ingest, and you become a hostile environment for these beneficial bacteria. And by consuming the wrong beneficial bacteria, or the ones that they call probiotics, is not helping, but is aiding this decline in health.
100%.
So anything you want to say, so we can tell people, contact the people at Natrin. We can give you the protocol again, and we can help you either start slow or go faster to get quicker results. The good point is that a Natrin precision probiotic will never harm you at any level. It's part of our evolutionary microbes that we evolve with, and it's there to help us under all conditions.
Yes. Thank you, Natasha.
All right. Thank you, Jini. Everybody, I'm glad you enjoyed this. Stay in touch. Let us know what you think, and we're happy to help you.